my skin so gorgeous. We thank the life gorgeous. Thank the life gorgeous. I love the life gorgeous. Its torso is so tight.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Life Gorgeous. Craigers. It's where I share my magical life in hopes of improving your life. One of my favorite guests, one of my favorite people, Minnesota nice, very talented writer for The Athletic, Jon Krawczynski. Nice to see you, sir.
Great to see you as always, Craig. It's been too long since I've heard the soothing.
Very soothing and healing.
Yes.
If you Google John's name, it'll say writer for The Athletic, but it'll say internet personality. I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I Googled it today and it said, I'm on Google Chrome and it said internet personality. What does that mean?
Maybe a jack of all trades. You know, these days we can't just be a writer, Craig. We got to be a Renaissance man of sorts. We got podcasts, we got radio, we got all of that stuff. Social media.
You are a local media personality, celebrity in Minnesota, but I think internet personality means you're national now because you're on the Rosillo show, you're on some national shows, and you're right there.
We're transcending a little bit. Yeah, hopefully that's the plan, to transcend in 2025. So let's see how it goes.
Also, tell me if this is true. I did some research. You're the only man in America who in second grade could spell Mississippi as in Mississippi River, but not his last name.
That's right. Maybe about fourth or fifth grade, I think, before I got that part of it down. Too many consonants. Not enough.
I don't like. Yeah, it's not spelled like the actor Jon Krawczynski.
No,
he
took the easy way out.
Yes. I get upset when I see the C and the Z. I don't know which bothers me more, but that's why we like to say Jonny Athletic. Also, I love your articles on The Athletic. You kind of do a deep dive on different topics, but also I like your Twitter X feed. I call it Twitter X so people know what I'm talking about. And I wanted to ask you, you're pretty honest. You're pretty blunt. A few weeks ago, we lost at home to Memphis, had the lead, blew it at the end, and you called it a brutal loss. Do the players or coaches get annoyed with you? Do they read your tweets and they get annoyed with you?
Not often, Craig. You know, there are select occasions where players have maybe seen something that I put out there and disagreed with it and objected to it. I generally try to be fair and like in my assessments. And so if they are mad, we can have a conversation about it. And then I can say, hey, are you going to tell me that Memphis loss where you gave them 25 more shots than you did? You're going to tell me that wasn't brutal? You know, you lose by 2 points and you give up 25 more shots. That's not brutal. And so I try not to be cheap. I try not to be gratuitous in sort of the shots or criticisms. I try to make them very much rooted in fact. But there's times where you get a little emotional, you watch it and you say, man, this was a gut punch. And if I don't kind of tell it how it is, Craig, I think people won't trust me to give the truth and unvarnished as much as possible. So that's the approach that I take. Sometimes there are some disagreements and we'll have conversations with it. Only one or two knockdowns in my career that I can remember, though.
I'm going to ask about those knockdowns, but wait, I hope this isn't extra pressure, but during the games when I'm watching, I will check your tweets because what did John think of that? I just got excited. Jaden is kind of warming up here. And then you'll say, Jaden hasn't played this well. But so what were the knockdowns?
There was one at the first, if you remember, the first round loss to Denver a couple of years ago. Rudy Gobert at the end of the game missed an offensive rebound. That would have helped them stay in it. Do they win the game? Do they win the series? Who knows? But I just said that, hey, Rudy Gobert has to get that rebound. Just has to. And Rudy, by the time I got to the locker room, disagreed with that. And we really did have a kind of face-to-face about it. To be honest with you, Craig, I also asked some other folks in the locker room about it, some coaches and things, and just kind of to see, hey, was I right? Was he right? It seemed like it was kind of a toss-up, but in the end, ultimately, I heard what Rudy had to say, and I did put out another follow-up tweet just saying, here's what it looks like, and maybe, if I read it wrong, I read it wrong. But it was a real forthright conversation. I was surprised that it happened so quickly after the game, but it just kind of does go to show that there are certain players and coaches and executives and agents who see all of these things and will send you their objections or will say, oh yeah, you hit it on the head right there. And so that's the nature of the beast.
I was going to ask you about, are there any players on the current team that you have to tiptoe around? Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if Rudy is one of them.
Actually, no. For as much as Rudy is aware of what we are reporting and what we say, both locally and nationally, I'll my very first Rudy interaction, after his introductory press conference, I went up to him and just introduced myself because I want to do that and get face-to-face contact and let people know who I am. And I say, hey, I'm Jon Krawczynski, write for The Athletic, covered the Wolves for a long time, look forward to working with you. And he looked at me and said, I know who you are. And so, but Rudy is very willing and able to have absolute real conversations with media members about basketball, about what he thinks about the game, about how we see the game versus how he does. And he really understands kind of the media ecosystem and everything about it. And so it's a great relationship. Yeah, we do have our disagreements from time to time, and he may not always think that I see things the right way, or I may not always agree with kind of his view on things, but it's always a really good, healthy relationship and conversation. And honestly, with this particular locker room, all the guys are very good to work with that way. That's not common. There's usually one or two people that you're just kind of, okay, what are we dealing with today? Or how do we kind of go about this and make this work? But Julius Randle, really good dude. Nas is great. Conley is one of the all-time great players to ever work with the media. Ant is good. All these guys are pretty open and pretty like welcoming of us and at least understanding of the job we have to do and helping us do it.
And then there's Joe Ingles, clown, the character.
Yeah. And Joe's thing this year is we walk into the locker room and Joe yells, F the media. And so it's all playful and jabby. And he is definitely the bleep stirrer in the locker room. And he's great. Like it's fun you can joke around with him. You can, I kind of came in after he had the one where he came in at the end of the game and throws the inbounds pass.
Yeah.
and he's a +1 in the game. And I said, Joe, your per 48 is like +1,000. Great job. And I was very much poking fun, and he took that very, all in stride. So good dude. Yeah.
What was the other knockdown? Tell me it was with one of the guys that I find to be a real irritant. I didn't like him, Pat Beverly. Was it with Pat Beverly?
Oh, well, Pat wanted fights with everyone all the time. That was his nature. And I think that he did that to that was the shtick. Like, it was always us against the world. You guys, there was a few times in that season that he was here, and it was an unexpectedly successful season. They got things turned around and got going in the right direction. And towards the end of the season, I mean, there were a couple of just sort of like snide remarks and things to us. And I'm just like, Pat, this has been a largely positive environment media-wise that you're in. We have written how influential you have been in this thing. Like, I don't see what the edge is. And is just grumbling, but, and kind of walking off. But he very much thrives on conflict.
Yes.
And it was never really anything personal, I don't think, between he and I or any of the other writers. But he felt like to get the edge, to get them together, it's got to be us against them. And sometimes he was successful in sowing the division, sometimes not. But it was largely, harmless interactions for sure.
Okay, I was gonna guess another guy, but I'm gonna wait. Who's the other knockdown with?
Well, so this one is goes way back to before social media. And it wasn't even directly to me, but like so I first started full time on the Vikings beat, 04ish, 05, and walk into the Vikings locker room, and Dante Culpepper is in there, and go up and introduce myself. Hey, Dante, I'm around here. John Krawczynski from the Associated Press, and look forward to working with you. He's like, Associated Press? No, man, no. And just like berates me right in the middle of the locker room because there was another AP reporter who had written something that he did not like.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, he gave it to me. Like, and at this time, I'm, 25 years old. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and I'm right in the middle of fire, and he is browbeating me. And eventually the Bob Hagans of the world, who and others, like, kind of helped broker a conversation, and we ended up doing just fine. But that was one where all the media were looking at me, all the players were looking at me. He's a big dude, the star of the show, and I'm this new face in town and just getting hammered. And it was like, I didn't know which way was up in the middle of that conversation. So
that's crazy. One more before I get to the Saturday explosion.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler. I'm not a fan of his. Sourpuss. I know people, a couple of years ago, guys, a friend of mine who works with the Heat says nobody likes him. That was a couple of years ago. What was your interaction with Jimmy like, Jimmy Butler?
It was volatile, but he will always, another one like Pat, who I think thrived off confrontation. Generally, he was one of those guys who, if you could sit down with him and have a conversation with him, he was smart. He was insightful. He was funny, charismatic, colorful. You could see why the players generally, a lot of them really liked him. He, really kind of commanded the room. But there was also plenty of times, as I was reporting through his exodus in Minnesota, where I would report something and he would take exception to it, even though it was 100% accurate. But that was just like the sign of the times of, like, when you're in the fog of war, it's every man for himself. And so Jimmy was very much interested in getting himself out of here as quickly as possible. And it got to be, real messy towards the end, really messy. And so, as this has played out in Miami, I know that there are a lot of Timberwolves folks like in the organization who are still here from when he was here, who kind of look and say, see, it wasn't us. It wasn't our fault, kind of a thing. And it's been interesting to see all that play out down there.
During that time with Minnesota, and he had issues with Karl Anthony Towns. And I remember John Calipari said, he was interviewed, he says, well, they come from different backgrounds.
Yes.
Cat was really close with his mother. And of course, Jimmy's mother threw him out. And her quote was, I don't like the way you look, which is tragic. But then there's a nice heartwarming story about a woman, a mother or stepmother or whatever took him in. But he's bothersome. He's bothersome, hell of a player. I was really excited. I couldn't believe it when we got him. I was like, we don't get these guys.
Yeah.
But then it, of course, went south. Okay, John, we played the Red Hot Nuggets, the great Joker, Nikola Jokic. I'm not saying Rudy outplayed him, but what the heck happened on Saturday? You call it the best win of the year.
Yeah, it was something that sort of came out of nowhere. Although if you've watched the team, you have seen them take little steps in improvement, I think, especially offensively over the last several games, or last 2 weeks, really. They're starting to play better. It feels like things are clicking a little bit, but then they get Denver, who had won, I think, 8 of 9 games before they came in. So the Nuggets were playing really well. But I do think that the combination of this Timberwolves team matching up really well against Denver, they don't have the rim protection that often bothers the Wolves. And so Ant was able to go to the rim, and Rudy was able to go to the rim without a whole lot of problems. And so that really helped. But I also just think that getting Rudy Gobert back to an effective Rudy Gobert makes so much of a difference. I mean, we'll talk about Jaden McDaniels. We'll talk about a lot of people, I'm sure, over this show. But Rudy has not been good enough all season long in general, especially rebounding, especially defensively. And then offensively, he's never been great, but it's fallen off a cliff. And what we saw on Saturday was 14 points, 14 rebounds, 5 assists.
Yeah.
Being catching the ball effectively, moving it to open shooters, getting rebounds, playing defense. Like, when he is that guy, they're a totally different team.
Yeah.
And he just has not been for much of the year.
I wonder what the key is. We don't have Kyle Anderson there to motivate him anymore. But how do we get Rudy to play consistently like that? I mean, a particular coach has to say something, or a teammate, or what?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of things. One is he does clearly miss Cat, because Cat would throw him the ball confidently, trusted him all the time. Julius Randle has not gained that trust with him yet. And so it is a more reluctant kind of approach to getting him involved offensively, even though a lot of time Julius Randle's reluctance is justified for the way that Rudy has played. But I think that not having Cat there as sort of his, not only the guy who empowered him offensively, but also just the guy in the locker room who just had this goofy personality that really made, Rudy feel welcome.
Yeah.
I think that's been a big thing for him. So you have that part of it. And then also, I do think some of the criticism that he is receiving now is actually good for the Timberwolves. I think Rudy sees that. I think he internalizes it. I think he does not like being the subject of coverage that says we are losing because of me. And so there was more of a determination on Saturday, because he knew that if he didn't come out ready to play, that Joker was going to tear him apart, as he has done so many times before. And so I think that some sort of external motivation like that is actually good for Rudy Gobert to hear and see every once in a while, to kind of get his butt in gear a little bit.
Right. The Wolves still had 16 turnovers, which is too many for me. I like 12 or under. It's the biggest. It's what kind of drives me crazy, because I'm a basketball purist, and this team turns it over. There have been great teams like the Warriors that turned it over, or Steph would turn it over. But is that a huge emphasis from the coaching staff, is protect the ball and play smarter?
Yeah, it has been. And to your point about the Warriors, like the Wolves just are not good enough offensively to weather all those turnovers. The Warriors could, because they have KD and Steph and Clay, and it doesn't matter. The Wolves cannot give teams extra possessions, because they just don't get enough going offensively. Now, they've been better lately, but it's been a constant point of emphasis for Finch and for his staff to try and get them to play a cleaner style of game. The problem is that I think they have guys who are prone to turnovers. I think Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert and Ant and even Rob Dillingham now and a few others are prone to having turnovers. So now the goalposts have moved from let's not turn the ball over to live ball turnovers. Don't do that.
Well, those are the ones that drive the bad passes. Offensive fouls don't bother me that much.
Right.
The illegal pick, but the passes. But I have this thing, I repeat it all the time. I don't think we have great passers on the team.
Agreed.
So when, I remember that Spurs team that beat LeBron and Dwayne Wade, they were swinging the ball and moving the ball, but these guys were ball players that they knew how to pass. And I remember Finch, he said a couple of years ago, he goes, we're not going to have a guy with 12 or 14 assists. And I actually like the true point guard, the Stockton, the Ricky Rubio, who they handle the ball. If they turn it over, I can stomach it. Which brings me to Rob Dillingham, who you and I both love. And of course, John and I also both are Anthony Towns, because we have excellent taste. But to be the type of steady point guard that I like, I used to tell people, Who do you want as a point guard? This is before we got Mike Conley. I said, I want a young Mike Conley. And of course, we got the old Mike Conley, who I still love. But there's so I think Rob Dillingham is going to be flashy and prone to turnovers and some crazy shots. But there's something, he's talented, and we love talent. So what are your thoughts on Rob Dillingham, and what is the coach's view, the coaching staff's view on Rob Dillingham?
Yeah, I mean, for like the overarching takeaway I have of Rob Dillingham is he's electric on a team with not a lot of electricity. Okay. So, you have Ant, who is explosive, but beyond that, how many athletes do you have that are breaking down guys off the dribble, getting to the basket, getting out in transition? Rob does all of those things very well. So I see why Tim Connolly brought him in, because he's like, you look at it like this guy has a unique skill set compared to any of our other players. So I love that about him. I think his handle, I trust it. We've seen Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dante DiVincenzo, even Ant dribbling the ball into traffic, and it doesn't go well. Yeah. I think when Rob goes into traffic, he's going to hold on to the ball more often than not. Yeah. So I think that is a big thing. There are clear things that he has to improve on: strength, defense, focus, turnovers. Those things are youthful areas that will, I think, improve over time. And I am in the camp where I believe that he should be playing regular minutes and getting him ready for the playoffs, because as we saw in the Denver game, that thing really started to turn when he came in that first shift and scored 10 points off the bench. Like, that's just what you need. Yeah. You don't need him to score 25. You need him to give you a burst of 8 to 10 points, right? Yeah. And just keep that offense going. So you are going to go through games where he's 1 for 9 with 4 turnovers. That's going to happen. But to win the war, you're going to lose a few battles in there. And so I think that the coaches so far have been a little reluctant to give him that run, because they are very much fixated on winning every single game they can in this crowded Western Conference. And I think that they need to kind of broaden their horizons a little bit and say, if we can get him regular minutes by playoff time, maybe he's more ready to be a little bit more consistent. And then by next year, maybe he's a starter. We'll see. But I think that he has too much talent, and he does too many things that the rest of the team does not. Correct. For him not to play.
The thing I love in the half-court offense, trying to manufacture a shot, when you got a guy that's lightning quick and he can get all the way to the rim. When he scored 10 points the other day in 7 minutes, he drove on the left side. There was half court, and he drove and laid it in. I love the play in Memphis. At Memphis, he brings it up, throws it to the elbow. I think it was Randall, and he got a handoff and went right to the rim, because he's so quick and so fast. And breaking down the defense like that is invaluable. So, and I can't wait for him to come in the game. And by the way, Dante DiVincenzo is one of my favorite players to watch. Right. He's just constant motion, quick release. It's going to be crowded when he comes back, but they'll figure it out. They might have to go small lineup,
Yeah, every once in a while. And I think, like, you look at the small guards like Rob, and so I compare him to Darius Garland in Cleveland, or Trae Young. They play the Hawks tonight. What those teams do is they surround him with big defenders that can kind of help cover. And the Wolves can do that. They have Ant as a big defender, Jaden, Rudy, they have guys. Nickeil can play, Dante can play alongside of him. And I think they can do enough to cover up his weaknesses and allow him to just put his imprint on a game offensively. And they have the tools to do it. So I hope that they continue to do that, because it's a big difference when he's out there.
You asked a question in one of your articles. Is there a good team in there? Is there a good team in there? And what's your gut on? I want to finish in the top 6, obviously. I want to avoid the play-in. And what's your gut on Wolves finishing in the top 6?
I mean, I think they can, Craig. For both 2 reasons. First is, I do think they have talent. Like, I think that from 1 through 11 or 12, they are a talented team with, high-end talent at the top and then with really good depth all the way through. And so if they play together, I think they're good enough to be a top 6 seed. The other thing that factors in is I don't like a whole lot of the other Western teams besides OKC is running away from it. I mean, if you put the Timberwolves in a first round series with Memphis or Houston or either the LA teams, like I think they have a good chance of winning those series. I just do. So if they stay healthy and if they continue to start to mesh and come together, I do think they can get in to this top 6. What we have seen from them, though, is they've been too inconsistent. And so they can also drop down to 9, 10, 11 very quickly because they just haven't been able to harness any kind of to sustain momentum over beyond like 2 or 3 games.
Both the Clippers and Lakers are playing well now.
They are.
So they concern me. They concern me. The consistency thing that throws me off is Jaden. The good news, Mike Conley's shooting really well now.
Mm-hmm.
That's really positive. But Jaden and Naw are not consistent with their jump shots. That's one thing that throws me off. And the other thing is, even last year when we had Cat, I was like, okay, so if we play a team, I look at the talent on the other team. Boston has a lot of talent, but they have these 2 guys, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. We have Ant, and then, we pay Rudy a whole bunch like a superstar because he changes the defense. But sometimes I look and I say, we don't have a lot of firepower, but I know we can play good defense. And then these guys can score, but Jaden in particular is a little infuriating. He's playing really well now, but how long will it last?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the issue. I think with Jaden, with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, with a lot of these guys is one game they'll look great and then they'll fall off, and and they go in between. What I'm encouraged about with Jaden McDaniels is that this sort of uptick that we've seen from him offensively is not because he's shooting the ball from 3 really well. He's not on a heater that way. He is playing like he's actually 6'11". Like he's going to the basket.
Yeah.
He's cutting. He's getting out in transition. He's scoring around in the paint a little bit more. And so, in the past it was, hey, Jaden's playing well for these 5 games. Well, it's because he's shooting 40% from 3 and that's going to fall off real quickly. But now you're seeing him have a 1 for 5 night from 3 and still be able to put up 18 points. Like, I think that's really important to the idea of him being a viable offensive threat on a nightly basis. We'll see if that sustains. I'm not sure, but he is one guy that cuts without the ball. He is one guy that can rise up over smaller defenders, and most of them are smaller than he is, and hit shots in the lane. He's got that funky little drive and pull up.
I can't believe it goes in.
It does. Yep.
It's soft. He pulls up. I think he's forcing it, and it goes in.
Yeah.
How tall did you say he was?
So he's listed at 6'9". He is not.
Yes.
He's definitely 6'10", and he may be 6'11".
Oh, wow.
There's a picture the other day that they were lined up for the national anthem, and he's standing next to Joe Ingles. Joe Ingles puts his head on his shoulder, and Joe Ingles is all of 6'8", legit, and Jaden is towering over him.
Yeah.
So he's 6'10". Like, I believe that, and he has long arms and all of it.
Did someone tell him recently rebound?
Yes,
and crash the offensive glass? But it looks like he's really jumping and reaching for the ball, which you're supposed to do, by the way.
Yes.
But it looks like he has a more of an effort now rebounding.
Yeah, there's been a big time emphasis on that from the coaching staff. And one thing that they like about Jaden and what he's doing that way is what Finch will tell you, and I'm sure you heard him say it, is the problem with our rebounding is we have to go up and get the ball.
Yeah.
Where there's too much hand fighting, especially with Rudy. They wait for it to fall right in their laps. Jaden now is going up with those long arms and getting the ball, and that's been a big step. You're seeing nights 8 rebounds,
Right.
6 rebounds, like 7 rebounds. Like that's more of the rule than the exception lately, which is a huge difference maker for them when he does that.
Okay. Do you ever, in your quiet time, when you see the Wolves play well, do you ever say, as a fan, say, maybe we can get hot in the playoffs and get back to the Western Conference Finals? Or do you not allow yourself to do that?
I can't say the Western Conference Finals yet because there's just been too many nights where it's just like you're tearing your hair out and you're like, what are these guys doing? But I do believe that they have the talent and the coaching staff to make that run if they are able to put it together. I want to see it happen, but I just really think that for as ugly as this has been at times, for as disjointed as it has been, that underneath it all, there is a good team in there. They have to dig it out of the mud. Yeah. And so I do not believe this is the case of a team that is under-talented and losing games because of that. They're losing games because the talent has not fit well together. And if they can iron out all of these wrinkles and get there, it would not shock me if they start to play well. You get to you're the 6th seed and you play Memphis in the first round. Can they beat the Grizzlies? Absolutely. Then could they beat Houston in the second round? Yes, they could do that. Yeah. Could they beat Denver in a playoff series? Absolutely. Yeah. The Nuggets can't guard Anthony Edwards. So like they can win a lot of these series. It's possible they can also go to the play-in and lose in the play-in game and be out. Like
they're capable. Yes.
It's the Jekyll and Hyde of it. Yep.
Let me ask you about Ant. I put a lot of pressure on him last year. And he rose to the occasion prior to the playoffs. I said it's kind of up to him, but he's so good. Although we all know, not the most fundamentally sound player, but he keeps working on it. He's certainly worked on his jump shot, changed his form a little more in front of him. Is it something where the coaching staff talks to him constantly on his decision making on the offensive end?
He is definitely always having conversations, especially pregame, watching film about where the pass is going to be, what decisions that he makes. If I were to grade him, I think he has done well in decision making, generally speaking, first through third quarters. And fourth quarter, especially late in fourth quarters, is where he really struggles because he wants to take every shot. And he forces things.
He does force shots, I'll tell you that.
And that's aggravating for sure. Finch has said they are too Ant-centric late in games, and that's why they're losing some of these games, because he takes some really tough hero shots. So every once in a while they go in. I think Houston was the game where he made the big one, but mostly they don't. So I think that I thought the Denver game, he was great at it. 9 assists, not forcing it, letting the game come to him. And what I always kind of come back to is he's 23 years old. And I still think what we've seen from him in the playoffs and in general, it says superstar, but there's still another step or two for him to get into the Shea, Tatum, Luka conversation. He's not there yet because of that decision making.
This is an observation that's not important, but I don't know how much Joe Ingles has left in the tank. Maybe it's not much. I would play him over. Why not? Why not?
Really? Would you?
Yeah. But here's the reason why. We all love Josh Minot. I'm a little surprised that he's not as good defensively. We think he's like Jaden. He's not. Coach said the other day it's because of his defense. But he is springy and he's good on offense. And he's a hustle. He's hustling. I like that. I just want to see what Joe has left because he can shoot the lights out and he can pass. But maybe he's a defensive liability. I don't know. I don't anticipate his role changing. Do you?
I don't. I mean, I know that Finch, obviously we know Finch loved Kyle Anderson, and I think they saw Joe Ingles as sort of Kyle light, especially at least on offense. But I do think that so far the defensive drop off is steep. And so I think that if you look at it where if he's not giving you defense and Minot is not giving you defense, you probably go with the younger guy just to see if you can continue developing him. there might be a time or two down the stretch here where
Right.
Ingles gets a few minutes, but I don't think it's going to be anything significant, and I don't think he's going to be entering the rotation for
Yep.
any
Yeah.
extended stretches.
Okay. I've been saving this, but what's the percentage? I wrote down what I think it is that they trade Julius Randle before the trade deadline.
It's probably lower than most people want it to be.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't see a clear move for them to make that also gets them better, which they do not want to salary dump Julius Randle right now. Like that is not something that they are interested in. Quietly, he's playing pretty well. I mean, I know he is a hard watch sometimes. They win all of his minutes. He's out there on the floor.
I know.
And they win all of his minutes.
He is so ice cold from 3 right now. It's ridiculous.
It's terrible. Like you have that, and then he'll take the ball into the post and hold it there for 20 seconds and miss a tough shot at the rim. And you're like, man, I can't watch this anymore. And then you look down and he's got 14, 7, and 7.
Yeah.
And the Wolves are a +8 in 18. I don't know. Like it's a hard thing to sort of like reconcile because it's clear that the fit is not great. But I do what I will give him is like I do think he's trying to be more of a passer, and I think that helps a little bit. I think that the defense he played on Gafford late in Dallas was something that Rudy frankly has not been able to do. So he gives them a few things here and there, and Finch loves him, absolutely loves him, and so I don't think that they're going to just attach that Pistons pick to him to send him out just to get him out of here at the deadline. I think they will keep him and then figure out what happens this summer, maybe.
Yeah, I have it at 20%. It's probably lower than that. But another question, going back, were the players shocked by the Cat trade?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. I think everyone had been told, and the messaging had been all summer long that they were running it back, that this was going to be it. Cat had shown up for training camp. He was with the team that week. And everyone was kind of assuming that, hey, this is going to be the team going forward. We are doing this. And then when they made the trade, it was, the Knicks finally put DiVincenzo into the offer at the 11th hour. And that was enough to get it done. But yeah, once the trade happened, everyone was just totally dumbfounded or shocked, whatever, however you want to describe it.
I remember when the Knicks came to town this year and destroyed the Wolves. You were on Dan Barrero's show, and he asked you, I think he knew, but he was just asking a professional question. He goes, "How's Cat doing in New York?" And you started laughing. I mean, how happy are you? I'm so happy for Cat.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was wondering, what the New York the Knicks fan base, how they would react to his offensive game. And I don't know if you know this rapper named Fat Joe.
Sure.
Did you did you hear what he said?
No.
This is like a month ago. He said, big Knicks fan, New York guy. He said, Karl Anthony Towns is the greatest offensive center of all time, better than Wilt Chamberlain and Hakeem Olajuwon.
Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. I'm thrilled for him. This is something that you and I had talked about for 9 years, that he is so skilled. And too many people, the Jimmy Butler thing, frankly, ruined things for him for a long time. And too many people looked at the wrong things when they were fixated on Cat's game. And now to see him thriving in that spot, which numbers that he had all put up in Minnesota before, but he's just on a better team. He has better teammates around him than he did during those years when he put those numbers up at center. He was putting those up with Trevion Graham and Shabazz Napier around him. And in New York, he's got Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges, and it's a little different. So I've always believed that you put good teammates around him, they're going to win. You're going to win games with Cat as one of your focal points, and that's exactly what's happening. It's been really funny to see a lot of Timberwolves fans now saying we never should have let him go when all of them wanted him gone after the Western Conference Finals. Little revisionist history, but hey, that's where we're at right now. So
And you find that, I know you find it irritating because you've mentioned it to me before, but
yeah.
these people in Minnesota who were down on him, trade him, and now they're like begging that, oh, I wish we wouldn't have done that.
All I got called for 9 years here was a cat apologist. Like, oh,
Oh,
you just have a good relationship with him. You don't see he's soft, he's this, he's that. And that was the drumbeat through everything. And I was like, no, it's not doesn't have anything to do with that. Yes, he came and watched my daughter play soccer. That's really nice. We have a good relationship, but he's a really good and really talented player.
yeah.
And that's what I saw. And I saw a good human being as well. And now that he is in New York, and now that he is putting up all these numbers again because he is at center and not at power forward with the big next to him, he has been validated. But that did bother me a little bit because that was one of the main things I heard criticism of my coverage was I was too good on Cat, and it's just like, no, like this is just what I see, and now it's bearing fruit here.
Top 5 MVPs, is 5th in the MVP ranking right now.
Yeah,
Best, I guess it's his best season. I guess I don't know if he was ever in the top 5 with the Wolves. Yeah,
yep.
And the other thing I always tell people, I do like to repeat myself, but it's Kevin Garnett's the greatest Timberwolf of all time. But people don't remember there was frustration with him offensively. He wasn't like Tim Duncan posting up. He would do the fadeaway. So when Cat comes along, he's a jump shooter. Yeah, he can post. His jump hook is automatic down low. I mean, remember that play when they won at Portland and Sam Mitchell was the coach and he threw it down a last second game winner. Anyways, we're not supposed to. I moved on, but I just love Cat. I love how well he's playing. But it is a thing where I'm an NBA fan first for 20 years before the Wolves came into existence. I was a Knicks fan and a Dr. J fan. And so when KG went to Boston, I rooted for KG. I was so happy for him. So I'm rooting for Cat. Trying to think if there's any other Wolves question. I did want to ask you, you mentioned the draft pick from Detroit, the first round pick. Is that something valuable? You said something about a trade. Aren't they going to keep that, or what do you think?
Yeah, probably. I would say they would probably keep it because, when they first got it from the Knicks in the deal, there was a belief that it would not be available to them this year because it was lottery protected.
Yeah.
But the Detroit Pistons have been so good that it looks like they're going to be outside of the lottery. And so now you're looking at a middle of the first round pick for them, which is huge because they don't have their first round pick this year because of the Rudy trade. So, so there's 2 ways they can do it. Obviously, they could hold on to it and use it as a draft pick, which would help them, or it does have more value in the trade market as a real chip to use to go get, if you want a defensive big, if you want some more point guard depth, if you want, another shooter, like they could use that at the deadline to entice some team that's wanting to sell a little bit to bring a talented player in here. And I think that it is more of a chip than we certainly believed it was going to be at the start of the season because the Pistons have played so well.
You actually mentioned something that I've thought about. You said defensive big. When Rudy goes out, Nas has to play center, sometimes Julius Randle. Have you ever heard rumblings? Have you heard rumblings about them maybe wanting a rim protector to back up Rudy?
I do think that, let's say November, December, that was clearly their biggest priority because Nas and Julius were not playing well defensively when they shared the floor. It was a layup line. Things were not going well. In January, those two have started to show some teeth defensively, that they have a little better chemistry. Nas in particular is blocking shots and doing Nas things that we did not see him do earlier in the year. So I don't think it's necessarily like a must-have at this point, but I do think if you could go get a Robert Williams, somebody like that to be like a spot matchup rim protector on against super big teams, against on games where you just can't get a rebound, you can't block a shot, throw them out there. I think that's something that they would look at for sure.
Okay, John, thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, he knows more than just Timberwolves. He kind of knows a lot. And we're going to just ask 2 quick Vikings questions, and we're going to wrap it up. How's the weather, by the way, in Minnesota?
It was brutally cold last week, but we're heading to the 40s this week, Craig.
Well,
So I'm gonna put the lawn chair out front and have a little Mai Tai and get some tanning oil out and enjoy myself.
that's how I always picture you, tanning in the backyard. Vikings. I believe Sam Darnold will definitely be gone. Is that correct?
I believe you're correct. Yeah, I think that it feels like the only scenario that he would come back is that if you don't think JJ McCarthy is going to be physically healthy for next year. And I have no indication that that is a worry for the Vikings, because you can't bring him back as the backup to McCarthy because he's won too much here. And as the second McCarthy struggles or whatever, it's like, hey, Sam Darnold, he's done all right. And I think that if he wanted a backup role, he would go somewhere else to do that. And I don't think that the Vikings are going to pay him
Right.
$40 million or franchise tag him to be their starter next year. So that's what
Right.
I would anticipate.
Is Daniel Jones going to be the backup?
I think so. It's not, I don't think it's in stone, but certainly they brought him in with that possibility in mind. And they got to look at him over the last month and a half of the season. He is now, really familiar with their coaching staff, and I think he looks at what Kevin O'Connell did for Sam Darnold, and maybe he leaves that possibility open for him to develop here. And so I would anticipate, if I had to bet, I would say yes, that Darnold leaves, JJ McCarthy is the starter, and Daniel Jones is the backup.
It's safe to say that prior to this season, when Sam Darnold had his best year, that Daniel Jones had a better career, was better than Sam Darnold up until this point.
Yeah, got more stats, won a playoff game against the Vikings, had some success on the field. Yeah, so I think there is a similar profile. I mean, both of them were top 10 picks in the draft, physically talented dudes, can run a little bit, strong arm. And so you could look at Daniel Jones as another Sam Darnold, where you come in,
Right.
put him in a good offense with good coaching and good weapons, and maybe he gets more out of it than he got in New York.
No way of knowing this, but how good is JJ McCarthy going to be? The Vikings believe in him, correct?
They believe in him. I'm a believer in McCarthy. I watch a lot of Michigan football. My dad and I would go to games when we were younger, to Michigan games. And so I think that he is, A, really talented, but B, has like this kind of innate leadership quality that people seem to be drawn to. So does it guarantee success? No, but even going into the draft before they picked McCarthy, I was a huge McCarthy guy. I actually liked him more than Drake May, who looks pretty good in New England.
Yeah.
I didn't like him more than Jaden Daniels, and he looks great. But I'm a huge McCarthy guy, so I think he can be a really good quarterback here.
Isn't it safe to say that he can't, his rookie year, his first year, this year coming up, if he starts, he can't be as effective as Sam Darnold was. He has to, he needs, there's a growing curve there. It's going to be his rookie year.
Yeah, I would expect that he will have certainly more turnovers, more mistakes, more mental errors than Darnold did. I mean, Darnold, of course, he threw a few interceptions here and there, but by and large, really took care of the ball, had a very clean season up until the last 2 games. And so I do think it's probably asking a lot to expect JJ to have the same efficiency as Darnold. Where I think that he can mimic Darnold is, I think he'll go down the field a lot. I think he will take chances and make big plays. And I do think that he can run a little bit, and he can move. And so there will be an explosive element to his game that Darnold brought. It's just, it may not be quite as clean as what Darnold was through 15 weeks of the season.
I'm concerned about, is he slight of frame? It kind of bothers me. His knee, he got the knee injury, the meniscus. I'm worried about his durability. But what about sleight of frame? He's listed 6'3", 218. I looked up Joe Montana, who was they listed at 6'2", 205. But are you worried about his durability?
I mean, certain, yeah. He's definitely slighter than Darnold. Darnold's a big dude, big strong dude, absolutely. And so here's the thing, Craig, that I think is so key to McCarthy's development is they're going to have to spend a ton of money that they have on offensive line, interior offensive line, like center, guards. Go get 2 at least to get in there. And because Darnold took a beating last year and he hung in there and he let those plays down the field develop, and it usually worked out well, but he took a lot of shots. And I don't think you want McCarthy kind of exposed to that same level of punishment. And so that's going to have to be the major priority in free agency, in the draft, whatever, is to upgrade the interior of the offensive line in a major way so that McCarthy has a clean pocket and isn't taking the shots that Darnold took this year.
Are you saying the Dalton Reisner era is over?
It might be as memorable as it was. But I think more notably, I think the Garrett Bradbury era is.
Yes, he was always undersized.
Always undersized, here for a long time, squeezed every bit that he could out of it, had some decent years, but there's just too many games where he could just get physically manhandled, and you got to get someone bigger and stronger in that spot.
Thank you, John. Always a joy. You gave me so much insight on my beloved Timberwolves. I'll probably see you at a game, might be the first round, second round. I might see you at Manny's Steakhouse.
Let's do that. Absolutely. Whenever you get to town, I will meet you there. So always a pleasure, Craig.
Thank you. That's John Krawczynski, a.k.a. Jonny Athletic, internet personality and writer for The Athletic. We'll see you next time. And remember, young people, I'm proud of you.